Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this humid, hot day. You didn't go home to cool off and relax. You came to be with us, and we are happy to see you. This special call session of the Board of Trustees of the Spring Independent School District is officially called to order on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. The time is now 7:04 p.m. Board trustees present are Winfred Adams Jr., Kelly Hodges, Deborah Jensen, Justine Durant, Jana Gonzalez, Dawn Davis, and myself, Rhonda Newhouse. I would like to ask everyone to turn off or silence their cell phones or electronic devices at this time, please. Thank you. Our next item is the superintendent's report. So at this time, I would like to recognize our superintendent of schools, Dr. Rodney Watson.
Thank you, President Newhouse and other trustees and guests in the audience. It's great to be with you all. It actually seems like we've been together a lot this month, including graduations and all the other meetings. But we are excited about tonight as we bring forth our budget for your approval. As we go through the budget tonight, you will see items that reference conversations that we've had since January. And so we're excited to bring that to you tonight. Just a few other updates since we last met. Summer school has started, and so we're excited about all of the students that have decided to come back, especially at the high school level. We've seen a lot of students come back, actually more than we had expected to come back, come for high school. We are continuing to support and to push opportunities for families that choose to get vaccinations at our schools this week and for the next several months. And we will be offering vaccinations in partnership with Harris County at Bailey, Clawton, Twin Creeks, and in Westville. And so if there's any parents or anyone in the community that is wanting to get vaccinated, it can be our students or their parents or anyone else in the community. Those sites are open for that. Tonight, we are going to be also going over our recovery plan with you. A couple of months ago, we shared with you our initial thoughts and got your feedback regarding our recovery plan. And we've gone out and talked with a variety of stakeholder groups and actually established teams that you'll meet tonight that has worked on that. They'll be sharing with you our update to this point, and then we'll actually be talking about the budget first. So that does conclude my announcements for now, and we look forward to the agenda ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Do we have any Board of Trustees members that would like to have a few words?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to just give a recognition and a shout out of appreciation to our partnership through the Ministerial Alliance. Several of the local churches are hosting summer school. And we started at my church yesterday through our Vacation Bible School. And so the kids are getting, they've had training. The teachers were trained by Spring ISD. Spring provided the curriculum and the materials. And so my daughter's there at the church teaching ninth grade math. She had 18 teenagers that were actually in her class last night, and excellent materials that were provided by Spring ISD. I think it's a very good way to get kids caught up, especially with the challenges we've had this year with the pandemic, and a wonderful partnership. And I just wanted to say things kicked off well yesterday, and so we're really excited about it. Thanks. That's Greenhouse International Church.
Now, Dr. Jensen, I have been asking about Springs Leadership Institute that I was unable to attend, but I heard that you were there. So I would like for you to share with us your experience at the Leadership Institute, because I hate I missed it.
I have spent, I think, half my adult life going to conferences, especially educational conferences, and I got to say this was one of the best I've been to, and that is no hyperbole, let me tell you. It was beautifully run. People were enthusiastic. They were helpful with each other. It was just a wonderful experience. Personally, I got to go to a STEM presentation with our science people, Mr. Rouse, and also there was a teacher from Springwoods Middle School and a student from the Spring Early College Academy who had done research with Jason. I got to get on the computer and I got into a simulation of a roller coaster and never could make my roller coaster safe. So I need to go back and work on that some more. It kept crashing at the end. So too much kinetic energy, but you know, it's just a wonderful, safe way to play with physics there. But they also had hands-on things, real physics in the real world. I will tell you that there were just some inspiring speakers who came and told about what it really takes to change around a high school or a district. And Dr. Hinojosa was, I think, the driving force behind this whole conference. And we really need to give her let's give her a hand.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. I have to say we have an amazing team, a professional development team, and I'd like to absolutely recognize everyone. Dr. Parasol, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Professional Development, and Diana Kimberly, our Executive Director out there, all of our professional development specialists. It took everyone here in central office to put that together for our campus leadership teams. We wanted them to experience a true conference because we hadn't been together in 18 months. And your words mean a lot to us, to the entire team. And thank you so very much.
Thank you to Dr. Jensen and Dr. Hinojosa. I sent a text to Dr. Watson commending him on the conference, and I was saying, well, I sure hope they can video or tape some of it so that we could see it at a later time. Did that happen? Did we have a video
Yes.
that we could review? Your speakers you had, I saw on the agenda were.
Yeah, so most of the
Fantastic.
sessions were recorded, and when you click on the agenda and the speaker, you can click on it and it links to some of the recordings.
Super, super. So
So
I
don't
actually
miss
would
those
advise
speakers.
others to look at it too.
Yeah, don't miss those speakers.
Okay, thank you.
So I've been participating, well, so I've been at conferences too. I was fortunate to attend SLI in San Antonio
Oh, good.
this past weekend and got a lot of good information in terms of my development as a board officer and the different roles that we play in doing leadership on the board. But in the last few days and ending tomorrow, I've been participating with some of the members of the cabinet and Dr. Jensen in the SGI initiative. And I had a really good talk from Commissioner Morath about innovations that the state is supporting in terms of really improving the quality of the seats that our children sit in the classrooms. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about that as we progress through the program.
I'd like to emphasize what you said, that Commissioner Morath did, I think, just a stupendous job. And he's far more revolutionary than I thought he was. He really is in for systemic change, for equity, and for really turning around, making schools all good places for students to learn. I didn't see all the sessions, but I got to say he was standout.
Great, thank you. Thank you to each one of you for sharing with us tonight. So I will continue with tonight's agenda. Our next item is agenda participation. This item allows members of the public an opportunity to speak on the agenda items before those items are considered by the board. Mr. Binkley, do we have anyone registered to speak under agenda participation?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Okay, thank you. We will continue then. We're going to move to a couple of items on tonight's agenda. So for our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief Financial Officer, Ann Westbrooks.
Thank you, President Newhouse. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Watson. Our first item we have this evening is the 2021-22 budget for the Student Success Initiative and Accelerated Instruction. And that is a requirement that the district set aside funds for our students who did not perform satisfactory on their end of course assessments. And so we're required to pass this portion of the budget prior to adopting the district's operating budget. And so the amount that is included in the budget that we'll see here in just a moment to specifically address the Student Success Initiative and Accelerated Instruction is $351,000. And that is being funded through state compensatory education funds. Just ask if there are any questions related to that item. And again, it is included as a portion of the budget, but we're required to pass this portion that's set aside prior to adopting the full budget. Okay.
Okay, hearing no questions or concerns, I'd like to move that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021 Spring Independent School District budget for the Student Success Initiative and Accelerated Instruction.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I second. Sorry.
No, I need you to make the motion.
You're
and
asking
then-
for a motion. It sounded like you
and
made the
then,
motion.
yeah.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021 Spring Independent School District budget for the Student Success Initiative and Accelerated Instruction.
I second it.
It's been moved by Winfred Adams, second by Don Davis, that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021 Spring Independent School District budget for the Student Success Initiative and Accelerated Instruction. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Ms. Westbrooks, will you continue, please?
Yes, ma'am. So this portion of the evening is the most exciting time of the year, second only to graduation, of course. And this is our public hearing for the 2021-2022 budget. And there was a notice for this public hearing that was posted on June 9th in the Houston Chronicle to allow our community members an opportunity to be aware of the public hearing and come and join us if they have any questions or thoughts or concerns related to it. And if you're following along, I do have one shift of some slides. So if you're wondering where I am, it'll catch up very quickly, I promise you. So starting here, our proposed budget, we're required by law for the board to adopt a budget for the general fund, the debt service fund, and the child nutrition fund. And so this year, our proposed budget is a total operating budget of $433.6 million, which includes our general fund at $339.6 million, a debt service fund, which of course we know supports our debt service payments related to our bond and our facilities that we've approved over the years, and then the child nutrition fund, which naturally is for our food service program. And so though we're asking the board to adopt the total operating budget this evening, the slides that follow will be specifically related to our general fund, which is the district's primary operating fund. And so here is our basis for our budget estimates and what numbers did we use in order to adopt and develop the projections that we have included in the budget for both the revenues and the expenditures. So the first item is our enrollment, and our projected enrollment that was used to create our staffing for the year and to create our revenue projections is 33,240. And that is, of course, less than the number of students that we had in this current year. For our next item, which is our revenue related to property taxes, we have used our estimate that was received from Harris County Appraisal District on April 30th, and it showed an increase in our property values when compared to prior year of 3.91%, and we have total property values of just over $16 billion across the Spring ISD boundaries. Using that property tax value that was submitted to us by the Harris County Appraisal District on April 30th, and also staying in line with our House Bill 3 requirement for tax compression, which says that anytime that our values grow by more than 2.5%, that we have to compress our maintenance and operations portion of our tax rate. And so what you see here is our proposed tax rate for the general fund, which is our maintenance and operations portion, is 0.9223, which is a proposed decrease from the current tax rate for the maintenance and operations, which is 0.9343. And we're anticipating an interest and sinking portion of the tax rate, which is what supports our debt service budget, of 42 cents. So our proposed tax rate is 1.3423. And of course, this evening, we're looking at the budget, but we will receive an additional estimate of our property values in July, and then we'll receive our final certified property values at the end of August. And once we receive those final certified values at the end of August, we'll come back in October and actually approve the tax rate.
Ms. Westbrooks?
Yes, sir.
So that 3.91% increase, is that typical?
The 3.91% is actually slightly less than the increase that we've seen over the last few years. We've been closer to around 7 to 8% increase in values. So it's still a strong increase, but it is slightly less than what we've seen over the last few years.
So if we generally have an increase that's higher than the 2.5% cap.
That has been our experience over the last several years. Yes, sir.
So we will keep compressing.
Yes, sir.
And the state will keep picking up a larger percentage of our revenue.
Yes, sir. As the tax code is currently written, yes.
So I guess that's a little bit surprising to me. And there's a lot of talk about housing the increase in the cost of housing. And so are we anticipating, and this might be getting off track, and so don't let me get too far off of what we're supposed to be talking about, but based on what the housing market is doing now, would we see a much larger increase next year if you were to speculate?
Possibly, but it depends on what happens across all of our categories. And so what we saw this year is we saw about a 9 to 10% increase in our residential values, but then our commercial values, which actually is the largest portion of our mix of values within Spring, we had a decline in the commercial and the industrial. So that offset had us with an overall lower amount.
That was a comment I was going to talk about, the difference in commercial and residential, because we are higher commercial supported. And we saw increases over the last few years with the shift and influx of commercial business in our area. There was a time when we didn't see that. We actually saw property values going down at one time.
Yes. So a couple of things to note here is, as mentioned, this is based upon the estimate of our property values that was received on April 30th. However, when we received the July estimate of our values, those are the values that are compared to last year's value to determine that final increase percentage that's used to create our maximum compressed rate that we'll receive from TEA. And so that 0.9223 is based on April 30th. And I just always want to note that that could possibly change based upon if there's a significant change in the estimate between the April 30th and the July 25th or so when we receive that one. So just like in years prior, if there is an update, then we'll bring that at the first budget review and it'll impact the rate that we ultimately adopt in the October or at the October board meeting. The next point to note here is with our interest in sinking tax rate of 42 cents, I wanted to make sure that we noted that when we went to our community back in 2016 regarding our 2016 bond program, at that time, our projections was that we would need to levy a 50-cent tax for interest in sinking in order to pay for the debt service associated with that bond program and our then already existing debt. But at this point, with the increases that we've seen in our property tax values, we've been able to keep that rate considerably less than what we projected several years ago. So that's something that we're excited about. That's good.
Ms. Westbrookson, on that note, there are times that people complain that their taxes are going up. And yeah, it's, I think, an important distinction that their tax rate has actually gone down, but their property's worth more. And that's why they pay more.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much.
And that's a common misconception we hear a lot.
Yes, yes. So this is a look at what's happened with our appraised values over the last 10 years. On the left-hand side of the screen and on the right side is our enrollment over the last 10 years for that same time period. And we can see our property values have gone up considerably and have actually more than doubled over the last 10 years. And of course, that has a lot to do with our top 3 taxpayers and primarily our number 1 taxpayer that came into the district over the last decade. And on the right-hand side, that's a look at our enrollment. And of course, the blue is our projected enrollment for 21-22. And we're optimistic that we will hopefully come in higher than that, but this is our projected enrollment. So just trends that we're seeing over the last decade that's very instrumental in how we develop our budget.
Ms. Westbrooks, you may not know this, but are other districts in the area projecting the same percentage of decrease around their attendance?
I do not know. As far as their projected enrollment, I have not seen that data yet as to
I
what
said
their
attendance,
projected.
I meant enrollment. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So this is a look at the mix of our revenue by source for the general fund. And as you can see, the state portion, the state aid is still our largest source of revenue for the district, followed closely by local revenue, which is 45.7% of our total revenues. And of course, that is by and large all mostly property tax revenue on the local side. And then we have a small portion that's our school health and related services, our JROTC, and some indirect costs that make up just 1.6% for federal as a portion of the general fund budget. And then this is a look at the mix of our expenditures. And as always, over 87% of our budget is in payroll cost, and that's the nature of the environment that we operate in. And then followed next by contracted services at 7.2%. So the primary thing to see here is how much of our budget is made up of staffing and payroll cost. And this is a look at our 2021-22 proposed budget in comparison to the third budget review for the 2021 school year. And so there's quite a bit going on here. And so the primary thing is we have some expenditures that are a part of the 2021 budget that we'll see go away in 21-22. And that's namely related to, we had some one-time costs that were still unreimbursed for our Chromebooks that we purchased, and we were purchasing PPE all throughout the year and those sorts of things, but also adjusting our staffing to our staffing guidelines based upon the number of students that are enrolled in the district. So that's the swing between the 2021 year and our proposed budget going forward. So at this point, I wanted to bring some information related to our TASB pay study. So starting last year in 2020, we began a partnership with TASB to, at the time, last year did a complete comprehensive analysis of our compensation and our staffing guidelines, as well as our compensation plan. And they, of course, benchmark Spring ISD compared to some other districts, 15 other area districts, and we did some analysis. And as a result, last year, as a part of the 2021 budget, we gave a 2.5% general pay increase and some equity adjustments based upon the results of that study. So here this evening, wanted to take a quick look back at where we were when we started this work with TASB. So when TASB did their first review, which was based upon our 2019-20 year, you can see here, these are the 15 districts that we were compared to. The median is that blue line. Spring ISD is the red line. And at this time, with the starting teacher salary of $54,000, we were at the very bottom of all of our surrounding districts. And if you go across the bottom, the highlighted information that shows the comparison to the median. So if we take all of those districts and rank them and look at the median and compare where Spring is in each one of those years, you can see the differences at the bottom. So starting with 0 years, the median for the starting salary across the area was $55,739. But Spring last year, 2019-20, we were at 54,000. So we were at 97% of the market, and the difference between Spring ISD salary and the median was $1,739. We were below the median by that amount. That same concept goes across in the 5-year, the 10-year, the 15, 20, and then the average. And you can see where we were at those times. And of course, if you look here at the 10-year mark, that's where we had considerable work to do, where we were quite below. So here is where we were prior to the 2.5% general pay increase and the equity adjustments that were a part of the 2021 budget. And so here's where we are now. In just 1 year, we came from the very bottom to now we're very comfortable in the middle, where you can see that the median starting salary is, looking again at the blue, $56,308. And Spring, with the current starting salary of $56,500, is above the median by $192. So we're at what's considered 100% of the market now. And as you go across, you can see in the 5 years, the $937, we're at 98%. And as we continue to go forward, there's certainly still some work to be done, but the gap is closing. So I'm going to take a quick look back at 2019-20, so you can just see those numbers across the bottom in comparison to 2021 and the amount of change that has happened in that 1 year. And that is absolutely representative of the commitment that the board has made to ensuring that we have a competitive compensation plan that positions us to be able to attract and retain not only highly qualified, but more importantly, highly effective employees for Spring ISD, ultimately to support our students. So the budget that we're proposing this evening continues with that compensation and ensuring that we remain competitive. And so it does include a 2% general pay increase for all employees. And for our teachers, based upon the control point, the teacher raise is $1,225, but there's also teacher equity adjustments in years 2 through 24 to continue to create enough distance between our steps on our teacher pay scale. And so with those changes, our starting teacher salary for the 21-22 school year would be $57,425. And though most of us that are June 30th fiscal years are passing our budgets this week and next week, so we won't have the final information for some others, but based on the Region 4 salary study that went out, most districts are doing between a 1% and a 3%. And so we're feeling as though we will remain competitive and hold that position that we saw on the slide right before. Okay. So with that, I want to move into federal funds and talk a little bit about how the general fund and the ESSER 3 funds and all of those are going to interconnect over the next 2 or 3 years, depending on the funding source. So here's just a comparison and analysis of general funds versus ESSER 3. So general fund, of course, is our local budget, our local operating budget. We build it based upon our projected enrollment, our staffing guidelines, and that's where our recurring costs are. And so the budget that we've seen over the last several months is a deficit budget of $19.9 million. So then ESSER 3 comes in, and ESSER 3 is, of course, a federal fund, short-term fund. Our total allocation that needs to be spent before September of 2024 is $101.5 million. ESSER 3 gives us the ability to supplant, which means we can take cost and expenditures that would typically be paid from general fund, and we're able to pay for them using the ESSER 3 dollars to help plug the hole, keep us whole, and as our enrollment continues to stabilize and hopefully return to the pre-COVID enrollment numbers. And we're also able to use these funds, and are actually required to reuse these funds, to supplement our general fund budget. And that supplement piece is where the recovery plan that we've also seen a couple of times, and we'll hear more this evening, is to address things such as our curriculum needs, additional staffing, and items such as the communities in school. So we will see some of that deficit, as mentioned, moving over and supplanted using our ESSER 3 dollars. And here I want to take a look at our ESSER 3 year 1 budget. And so, of course, we know that our recovery plan is grounded in our theory of action. And there's those 5 tenets that our recovery framework is built upon. And you'll hear even more about that later on this evening with Dr. Hinahouse's presentation. But this is a look at those expenditures, starting with the total revenue, which that's just taken that $101.5 million divided by 3 years. And so that's our year 1 allocation. At the very top is the supplanting expenditures from general fund. And then we begin to see our supplemental services and resources that we'll be able to provide in order to address learning loss and create acceleration for our students, and all of the resources that are associated with that. And so a couple of things that I want to point out here, and we'll look at staffing in just a moment here, but we do have one item that's listed in purple, and that is our Amplify curriculum, that we may get a portion of that funded through TEA, which would put those dollars back on the table for us to be able to provide some other resources that are needed, or some other professional development, those sorts of things that are needed. And one other point to note is with the expenditures with general fund, if that number is lower because things are looking, our picture is looking a little rosier than what we anticipated, then that would just free up more dollars in ESSER 3 that would again be available for additional resources or support systems that we can set up for our students. Okay, and so here is the positions that are funded using those ESSER 3 dollars. And so there's 130 positions total, and you can see them listed here and which level is supported by those positions, as well as towards the bottom of the page is the contracted services. That's the CIS services, where there will be 10 positions to support those campuses for counseling services. And so our last portion of the public hearing is all of our other federal and state programs that are particularly our federal programs that are available. And we are in the process of submitting those applications. And as always, we want to give an opportunity for any comment, questions, or concerns related to those applications as well. And we do have our Assistant Superintendent of Federal and State Programs, Ms. Kelly Klein, who is here with us this evening and is more than happy to answer any questions related to those funds as well.
I have a general question that the additional positions align with the recommendations that we receive from both the staffing and the equity audits. Is that a true statement?
You say Ms. Klein is here with us tonight.
She is.
She may want to come up, or I'll ask her if she will come up and share with us her plans for these funds.
Come on up. Are you asking specifically the ESSER funds or the Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 funds?
ESSER funds is what I was speaking of.
Okay.
Is that her?
She's
She's
more
doing
so
our
Title
Title
1,
I.
2, 3, and 4. The ESSER funds are what's listed here with ESSER 3.
That's a presentation.
Present, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not really a question, just concern. I'm always following the stuff pertaining to ROTC. And I know ROTC is a federal funded, part of the salary is paid by the Department of Defense, other part is paid by the school. That's the agreement. There's been quite a bit of talk about the portion coming from the Department of Defense. Do you have any updates? Are they going to, it's going to be, I know some schools are losing instructors and not being replaced and so to speak. Or what do we stand on that? If you may.
As far as the staffing for the ROTC
Yes,
programs,
the staffing and the funding.
we have not heard anything regarding a change in the funding that's coming from the Department of Defense related to ROTC. But I can say that with the staffing, it's based on the number of students that are enrolled in the program, and the staffing is adjusted accordingly.
Exactly. So my understanding, I'll be real quick. I'm trying to stay on track. My understanding is that if a school fall below the 151 for 3 instructors, they fall below that and they lose the instructor, the Department of Defense is not going to replace that person.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
You know what's going on.
So I'm very pleased to see the line item for SEL here. What I don't see, and I wonder if we're still pursuing it, is the budget for two-way dual language instruction. So I know the model we had was that we were growing that a grade level every year, which would mean, to my mind, adding instructors to go up with that cohort of students that were in that program. And so I really don't want to see that program die on the vine, as it were.
Absolutely. What you're looking at here is the line item for ESSER. That's in the general fund budget.
Yes, it's in our baseline budget as part of the staffing guidelines. And so as those programs progress up a grade level, then we have brought the teacher along. We've added the teachers. Yes, sir.
So I'm struggling a little bit because I'm constantly looking for what we're doing and investing in as it relates to curriculum. And there's some really great things listed here, but these are listed from an ESSER perspective. Do we have anything that shows what's in our general overall?
About the general budget or the curriculum?
As it aligns to curriculum. Mhm. I'd just like some line of sight on what we're spending for curriculum and the effectiveness of what those resources bring to our population.
So in terms of curriculum, we provided you all with a flash drive with all of the zero-based budgeting processes that gives you a line of sight and line item for every single expense related to curriculum under the general curriculum budget. And then we bring to you all every curricular resource that we purchase. You all go through and have opportunities to look at it, read through it, and approve it individually. And so that information is on that flash drive in the big budget document that has under curriculum and instruction. And we can get that back to you again.
I have that. I guess the question was around the effectiveness. So why don't we take that offline for another time?
Okay.
So Ms. Westbrooks, let me ask you to come back to the general funds and ESSER 3 page. A deficit of 19.9 million in the general.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we looking at do I see this arrow going up, and maybe you said it and I was reading and didn't hear it, in recovering that in the ESSER 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mhm.
I kind of felt that's where the arrow was going, was telling me what would take care of that.
Yes.
But
And so what
you may
we're,
have
what
said
we're,
it and I was reading.
yes, ma'am. What we're anticipating is that we will see our students return and that we'll see our deficit stabilized. And so, but what ESSER does is it keeps us whole as we see that. And so each year we'll continue to keep a laser focus on what's actually happening with general fund and make as many adjustments as necessary as we go along. But what the ESSER funds does is it just gives us time to stabilize, to hopefully, quite optimistically, our pre-COVID enrollment.
And that holds for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is ESSER $3. And what we haven't talked about yet really is ESSER 2. And that's because we're still getting some clarity around ESSER 2, particularly how and when those dollars can be spent, and specifically the hold harmless portion of it. So we'll definitely bring ESSER 2 back at a later time with more information and start that planning process. Right now, ESSER 3 is what we know for sure. We know how that all works. And so that's why we're primarily focused on ESSER 3 and its relationship with general fund at this moment.
And can I ask Dr. Hinojosa if she's comfortable with the additional expenditures we're getting in ESSER 3 as it relates to what we need to support our students in a robust curriculum and getting them back up to speed? I see a lot of items here and it looks great. I just want to make sure thank goodness we have the ESSER funds to be able to do it. I just want to make sure we have everything we need and how we determined what we decided to invest in.
So thank you, Mr. Ant. And one of the pieces that you'll hear in our update with our recovery plan, in just a few moments, you'll be able to see, and we'll go deep on the curriculum piece, as well as the monitoring piece. You know, the effectiveness, I hear that in your question. So feel really comfortable with that, and you'll be able to spend a little bit of time on that in our next presentation.
Thank you. I'll hold my questions.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the end of the presentation, unless there are any additional questions.
With no additional questions, then I will continue. Our next item is a public hearing for the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District budget. So at this time, I would like to ask Mr. Brinkley, do we have anyone registered to speak under public hearing?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Okay. So with no registered speakers, we will continue. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District budget.
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021 and 2022 Spring Independent School District budget.
Do I have a second?
Madam President, I second the motion.
It's been moved by Don Davis, seconded by Deborah Jensen, that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District budget. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So as we continue tonight, our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of Innovation and Equity, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa.
Thank you, Ms. Newhouse, and members of the board. If you'll allow me just a minute, we're going to bring up our presentation. So what we want to do this evening is to provide you an update on our recovery plan that we shared with you last month. You have the presentation in your packet. You also have two additional documents. One is the data from the survey that we put out to our community in general, as well as our staff. So you have that you may want to review at a later date. And we've also included some files, some screenshots of what you'll see as part of the presentation when we begin to talk about teacher profiles, and those are larger screenshots so that you'll be able to see it. And we want to be able to drill down enough on the curriculum aspect of the work that we've been doing with our design teams, as well as spend some time on the monitoring of our plan, as well as the success of the implementation of the programs. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Matt Parasol. He is our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Professional Development to walk us through the plan so that we can spend enough time needed on specifics around our curriculum, the monitoring, as well as the professional development. Dr. Parasol?
I'm excited
Turn
to
on
share with you.
the mic.
There it goes. And the presentation, is it loaded?
I'm not sharing, so
It was It was great to hear all of the questions about curriculum, something that I'm very passionate about, obviously, in my role, as well as I know that all of us are, as that is the core component to ensure that our students are getting the knowledge and experiences that they need. And the Spring ISD recovery plan that was shared with you last month by Dr. Hinojosa, we had that opportunity to share the oversight, and there's been so much work that has been done since then, and to be able to show the artifacts and the work that our teams have done. So it's an honor to be able to present this on behalf of the hundreds of individuals who've been involved, and actually thousands. Little LED light works. So batteries are good. Oh, that worked. Yes. Thank you so much. So I want to start with really talking about, I know several of us were in the meeting this morning with the System of Great Schools, where the commissioner spoke with the state of where we are in Texas. COVID has had unprecedented effects on our students and our staff, and that is across the entire state. So the learning loss over the last really year and a half has had this ripple effect that these recovery dollars and this recovery plan is designed to help close those gaps and give our students that boost to ensure that they have success moving forward, that there is no reason to say, well, they were the generation from COVID, that this plan is guided around us closing those gaps. So across the state, our local scores mirror what we saw. Declines in mathematics. Students' reading skills did continue to develop, however, slower and not making the progress and the growth that we would have liked to see due to the pandemic. There were also slight dips in English rates at the high school level. We're going to be bringing back more detailed data to you in September that breaks it down by each of the student groups, so we can look at our subpopulations and our student needs specifically by group. This chart, and it is in your packet as well, is the overview of our STAR results for grades 3 through 8. And you can see where we were before the pandemic in 2019 to where we are today. And so you can see that very stair-stepped effect from 2019 to 2021, with math having the greater loss than we saw with the literacy. And a lot of that is due to, even amongst the pandemic, students were on the computer, they were reading, they were getting those experiences, but so much of math is that hands-on, really that manipulatives working through the problems. And so we do see greater losses there, here and across the state. Looking at our EOC results, again, we see that same pattern, with English 2 kind of set out as a little bit different, where we do see some growth in the meets level, slight growth, and we stayed the same for our approaches and masters. I do want to hand it over to our district rep, Melissa Stadford. She's our strategic account manager with MAP, and she will be reviewing with us the data from our MAP a screener and assessment that we give as part of our BOI middle of year and end of year assessment.
Do we know what percentage of our students took the exam? 50 and 60%. Thank you. We went up.
That's-
Same for end of course? Okay. How many of our students tested?
Please give that
Was
answer
it
again, because
mandatory?
we didn't all hear you.
I apologize. So, and of course, it was about 50% test taking. It depended on the campus. Some campuses had better amount of students attending. And then as you go to the lower grades, participation increased around 60 to 70. Some schools had 70 and 80. McNabb, I know, had almost 100%. So it really depended on the school. But if we're talking about district averages, that's where we were.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Cobb, we have students testing this week though, correct?
Correct. They are taking the EOCs because fifth and eighth grade SSI. So when they students had to take normally in the summer up until new legislation, would have to take fifth and eighth grade in the summer as part of their criteria for the grade placement committee to determine whether they could move forward or not. But it's only for this week. It's only the EOCs because the EOCs for graduation still remained. The requirement.
100% would have been great, but over 50 still gives us a good sampling and perspective. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Watson and Board of Trustees, for having us to share the overview of your spring 2021 data for MAP Suite. I'm going to go ahead and ask Dr. Parasau if you would go ahead and advance the slide for me. So what we know, and you've seen in some of the data on the previous slides, is that in the absence of that data last year, we really were focusing on that school restart and where students were as they returned to school, knowing that it was a subset of those students. And then as we really took a dive into some of your data this winter, really trying to uncover how are students achieving? And then how do we begin to really support that accelerated growth through the remainder of this school year? You can go ahead and move to the next one, please. Thank you. And as we think about the metrics in MAP growth, we really are considering this relationship between achievement and growth. And when we look at the growth that's expected from a student or a group over the course of the year, we look on actual data in that larger nationally representative group to identify just how much a student is expected to grow, in this case, in the course of the winter to the spring, or really looking at the second semester of school. So that's what determines that average growth of similar peers. And you can see in that center arrow that when students meet that growth projection, their typical growth is at the 50th percentile, but what's in parentheses is really more important there. And that is the maintenance of achievement. So if we're looking to maintain achievement, then we really are looking towards that typical growth projection being met. But if you look at that arrow that's aimed upward, where students are exceeding the projection, this is where that growth percentile is above 50, and that's where we see a shift in that achievement. So those are the trajectories that we really want to aim for when students have seen a dip in achievement because of interrupted learning, or because we're addressing gaps and potentially interrupted learning at the same time. Now, in that downward scenario, when students or groups don't meet that projection, that growth percentile is less than 50, and you can see again that achievement follows with a decrease or a dip. So you can go to the next one there, and we'll put this in kind of a concrete example of a fourth grader, Sophia, who's taking math after about 4 weeks of instruction. And Sophia's score on MAP growth puts her at the 35th percentile. So under what we would consider as typical fourth grade performance in math. And based on that sampling of students in that large norm group, we expect over the course of a school year for Sophia to improve by 11 RIT points on MAP growth. And you can see that when she attains that goal, her growth percentile is 50, but look underneath at what happens to her achievement. It really is bumped by just 1 percentile point to 36. So when Sophia enters grade 5, she's not in a significantly better position as a 5th grader in the fall taking math as she was as a 4th grader. But if we can stretch Sophia just 3 more points to that 14 over the course of the school year, look at the increase in her growth percentile, and then subsequently achievement follows. So she ends the year in the 44th percentile, better positioned going into the fall of her 5th grade year. And then conversely, if she does see growth of 8 points, but it's not quite what we expect, her growth percentile is at the 31st, but notice again what happens to her achievement. Her achievement actually declines from the 35th at the beginning of the year to the 30th at the end. So as we begin to look at some of these shifts in growth, knowing that that impacts achievement, we want to kind of uncover where grade level groups of students are and how that paints the story initially of student recovery. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. And for just a few moments, really begin to focus on growth of these grade level groups. You can advance to the next one. And certainly, this has not been a typical school year. And if we think about our norms, while they were released in July of 2020, we're often asked, oh, are those pandemic norms or are those COVID norms? And our norms are based on normal or typical school years. And what you see here is information from Dr. Nate Jensen, who is the director of our Center for School and Student Progress, and some considerations that we should be keeping in mind as we analyze any of our data for this particular year. And so that context that we have to keep in mind is that we're looking at growth projections and achievement based on typical school years. And those norms are built on those weeks of instruction. So what we expect for students with 6 weeks of instruction would certainly be different than what we expect if a student has 2 weeks of instruction. And with the increase in remote testing and distance learning, there is a need for that extra scrutiny around the data, really looking at whether or not those results are unexpected or expected, and what does that mean? And then also, as been mentioned already, which students are represented in your data. And certainly the data for the students that aren't represented can be equally as important as the data for students who are represented. So we really need to think about any shifts in that data based on students who are present or not present. So let's go ahead and move forward. And we're going to take a look at your student growth summary. And that's going to focus on movement of grade level groups in math and reading. So we really want to think about, did students change their place in space? So when we looked at where they were in the winter and then again in the spring, did achievement trend upward? Did it stay the same? Or did we see a little bit of a dip? And again, we're looking at grade level groups. So let's go ahead and take a look at math. So here we're looking at your K-8 grade level groups and the relationship between that orange diamond and the blue bar. So the orange diamond tells us what we expect in terms of growth of the group, and the blue bar tells us how much growth that grade level group demonstrated. So I'm just going to use grade 1 here as an example, and you can see that the orange diamond is lower than the height of that blue bar. So this would indicate that the first grade group had 8 points of growth over the course of the second semester, and we expected just more than 6. So they exceeded what we expected in terms of growth. And I just want to reinforce that that expected growth is against typical norms in a typical school year, not atypical pandemic-based norms. So you can see in the trend across these grade level groups that the relationship between those orange diamonds and those blue bars is pretty tight. And the two spaces where we have a little bit of distance there would be in K and grade 5. So these would just be some groups that we would keep an eye on in that recovery plan as we continue to monitor how they're doing. Let's go ahead and move to the next one and take a look at reading. So reading would really be interpreted the same way, the relationship between those orange diamonds and the purple bars. I've put a box here around grade 2 because your reading administration begins in grade 3. So while we had a few testers here, we wouldn't really make any high-level decisions or inferences based on the small number of students there. So here you can see, again, in grade 3, that orange diamond being lower than that blue bar. So students really looking at growth that was greater than what we expected. So let's go ahead and advance to the next one, if you don't mind. So here are those shifts in achievement. So just to keep in mind here that where we saw growth being more than expected, achievement will follow. So I want you to look, for example, at first grade math. When we track down all the African American and the Hispanic group, we see the achievement of the group trending upward. Now, it may not be your ultimate ending point. There's still work to do. But as we think about moving students along in their recovery, improving their achievement, growth is the first step. So when you look across the changes in achievement in math, you can see that in certainly a number of these grade levels, achievement has shifted upward. And then likewise in reading, we see achievement shifting upward as well. Just a call out there again that in K1 and 2 reading, students aren't assessing, so we really begin that look with grade 3. Let's go ahead and move to the next one and look at students as individuals. So in the previous visuals, we were looking at how did the group move as a whole, all of those third graders marching together. But here we're looking at them as individual students. Did they as individuals meet or exceed their growth projection in the second semester of school? And so you can see when we look at math that we have quite a few areas where half or more of students met or exceeded that growth projection. And then in reading, likewise, when you look across those grade levels, we see that in many instances, half or more of students are meeting or exceeding those grade level projections. So when we think about maybe grade 5 in math and 7, those numbers were close. Remember, we're comparing against a typical school year in those norms. So we're really seeing students exceeding what that expectation is in a number of cases. And let's go ahead and move to the next one. So in terms of growth and math in particular, we've got some bright spots here. That achievement increased from winter to spring in all of the grade levels that you see listed. And at least half of students are meeting growth projections across grades K through 8, with the exception of grade 5. And again, we have to keep in mind that context of typical school year norms in an atypical school year. In reading, also that achievement trending upward in winter to spring, grades 3 and 5, and at least half of students meeting or exceeding those growth projections in 3 through 8, with a call out for 7. So in terms of opportunities there, certainly it would be to continue to support students that are struggling learners that might be experiencing more so the impact of interrupted learning. And then certainly thinking about those rising students in grade 6 and grade 8 and how we might leverage some of the supports and resources that you'll be implementing for them. Let's go ahead and move to the next one. Thank you so much. Now, in terms of achievement, where might there be some areas where students have seen some progress and improvement in the course of the last few months? And in terms of unfinished learning, data and money in math and geometry and measurement, these are often things that come later in the spring. So students may not have received instruction during that closure period. So we see some progress in learning in those areas, and then in reading, progress in those foundational skills, which are certainly critical to their success and their future endeavors with school. And then the opportunities in math, numerical representations and relationships, in reading, multiple genres, and then author's purpose and craft. So some things to really think about in the way that we continue to support teachers in planning instruction aligned to their data. So you can go ahead and move to the next one. And just in your continued discussions, you're likely centered around those areas of strength and need and what the data uncovers in a variety of measures. Here we've seen some STAR EOC and then certainly your MAP growth data and how we know if some of those strategies are effective and working and which students are growing, which might not be growing as quickly, and how do we uncover whether it's engagement or some other areas of impact that might be resulting in some of those different rates of growth, and then what adjustments can this inform as you move forward. You can go ahead and advance the next one for me. And ultimately, using your data in ways that create opportunities in this recovery process is where we would really, highlight the work that we're doing in partnership with you. So I'm going to turn it back over now so that we can continue on with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. And I think that what we saw there is the great difference when we look at achievement with STAR and the growth that our students still experience through the year. To truly paint a picture of where we are, our teachers and our principals gave it all to make sure that our kids were getting the instruction, and that we see that in that MAP data and that growth, so that so many of our students were able to maintain even due to a typical year versus the year that we've experienced, year and a half we've experienced. So with the state of where we are with our achievement and growth, we know that we have a huge lift in order to be able to move that needle and get our students up to their grade level needs. And so the recovery plan that we're going to review is grounded in these expected outcomes. You'll see at the very top that the district reaches an 80 or greater for an overall domain score for a rating of B, to bring us up to that B rating as a district. The other components, all of those other goals that we'll be working towards through this year, all feed up into that primary goal. And we also know that as a board, you are meeting this summer to give us that North Star, to guide our work moving forward. And all of that will work together utilizing the resources that we've laid out based on the feedback from our stakeholders. So stakeholder input has been the guiding light. That has been the lighthouse to guide the work from the very beginning, as well as we work to operationalize. Dr. Watson, cabinet, and many members from campus, as well as district leadership, have been meeting with various stakeholder groups to get their input and facilitating those sessions. That included the ACE committee, the Ministerial Alliance, our parent advisory group, and the superintendent's student advisory group as well. We met with principals, and we also sent out a survey that included our community and as well as our staff and parents. From that, there were 9,386 responses, almost 10,000 individuals responded. And from that, 53% were parents who outlined and said, these are the things, these are the steps that we need to take as a district in order to close those gaps for our students. And their focuses are laid out there. And those are in order according to the priorities laid out in that survey. And we're going to cover each of these in a little bit more detail. So our Spring ISD framework is built on these 5 tenets. Really these levers, these big buckets that are going to give us the tools and resources, as well as the monitoring that we'll be doing to make sure that we reach those goals and our North Star goal that you develop. So the first one is highly effective principals and teachers. The second is aligned curriculum and ongoing progress measures, maximize learning time, high dosage tutoring, and safe and secure learning environment. The design team that took the feedback and the data and reviewed all of that information from our stakeholders and the various committee groups, they took that and they looked at what is it going to take to operationalize it? What are the tasks we need to build? What are the supports we need to find to meet these goals? As you can see, that is a group of over 50 individuals that encompass central office staff, our principals, APs, teachers, in bringing together this plan today. And we have many of these individuals with us in the audience, and I would like for them all to stand to be recognized. And they spent countless hours meeting together, getting input and researching in order to make sure that each of these tenets was fully operationalized. So I want to start with this slide that looks at tenet 1, and it probably looks very familiar to you from the presentation that Dr. Hinojosa presented before. We have the inputs that are listed, and we have also added and updated it to show the actions that have been taken since the last time we met. You'll also notice that there are little starred items. These were those top priorities that came about from the survey. So let's take a look at some of these items in more detail. The first one is the teacher profiles. And you have these also in your packet where you'll be able to see, I know that image is very small, but you'll be able to see each of the components. Our research, accountability, and assessment team has built these teacher profiles for every teacher that utilize the data that we have. It looks at their results from STAR, from MAP, their absences, years with the district, to truly paint the picture of what the teacher's needs are. It will guide the administrators as they perform coaching, goal setting, as well as identifying the professional development that each of our teachers needs. With that data in hand, we'll be offering differentiated professional development designed to help each individual rise up in their skill set to ensure that we have content experts and leaders who are equipped with all of the training that they need to be successful. We have this summer already. I know we spoke to it. Dr. Jensen mentioned earlier as she attended the Leadership Institute, and that was all focused on our leadership definition and equity for our students. We also have the Summer Teacher Conference that is underway in July. And so we'll be bringing in thousands of teachers to provide training on the various curriculum items, as well as our Springway systems and routines and PLC processes. The professional needs survey we sent out the second semester to get an idea of what it was the teachers and administrators needed in their PD. And we also have the data from those profiles to help guide that work. Additionally, as part of this lever, we're also going to be adopting a badging and micro-credentialing program, and where we will be awarding staff as they complete and attend PD. They show evidence in their data that they've implemented those learned practices and that it made an impact for student achievement. And so each teacher in the district, as well as our leadership teams, all our staff will have individualized pathways that they'll be able to earn those achievements and badges. They'll be able to share them out on social media and also have them as points of pride for what they've accomplished. And that will track with them with their time in spring. Regarding the aligned curriculum and ongoing progress measures, again, you can see several of those items that were key important to our stakeholders. Specifically, that curriculum for reading and math, we saw the results. For really the need to close those gaps, those foundational core curriculum items that impact so many other areas, as well as having effective diagnostic assessments so that we can track student growth throughout the year. And so in researching the curriculum, we had been in a lot of conversations with TEA, and we had learned about the CRIMSI pilot. It is the COVID Response Initiative. And we piloted that in the spring semester for our iZone campuses under the leadership of Dr. Natasha Watson. And the feedback that we had from those teachers was just phenomenal. I even had a couple of them in my curriculum update session in the Leadership Institute that they just couldn't keep they couldn't keep still. They said, I want to share what I did and how great it was for our kids. But these resources truly embed within them all the supports that teachers need, where before they would often spend hours lesson planning, that it is already prepared. They're able to take a very structured lesson and be able to implement it with all of the answer keys completed to help guide as they're trying to grade quickly and intervene on their students' behalf. So what we heard from teachers was they needed that time to be able to focus on the data and how am I going to close those gaps for my students. And this curriculum has that embedded, as well as the supports right down for our English language learners, as well as students who are served under special education. Lots of ideas for teachers to really guide them. If you're seeing this, do this. What you'll also notice on the right is what we have kind of framed as the rainbow. But what it is it is a core menu. It is the menu of the spring way for curriculum implementation. And I know, Mr. Rant, you had asked about all the different products we've bought. And I know that's a continuing question that we've brought together, is about how are all these products being used in unison? And that's what this chart lays out, is that these are the assessment systems that we use to get the data to inform instruction. Here is each tier. So if students are in tier 1, these are the resources that are being implemented by every teacher in every classroom for every student throughout the year. That what showed up in the equity audit with teachers students moving from campus to campus and being behind because now, I have to learn this new product or this new software, that those will be a thing of the past because we have that core menu laid out. Still allowing flexibility for campuses to do purchases for things like tutorials after school or Saturday interventions that occur. But the core menu is laid out and it will be the same across the district. Also embedded in the aligned curriculum are supports for college and career readiness. Moving to purchase Apex Learning, we had piloted it this year, and the reviews were fabulous. Principals kept saying, can I get more licenses? Students were engaged. So many of those kind of prep materials, are not the most engaging, but students were engaged in Apex, and the data showed that it was effective. On top of that, the implementation, the fidelity implementation is so essential. And so for this new year, the Lever 2 team has been working on that KPI dashboard. And what that will do is that you can see an image of it on the top right, and it has those bars that say this is the goal in gray, and this is where we are in blue. Principals will be able to click into each of those bars, and they'll be able to see their campus-specific data. They'll be able to drill down even to the teacher and to the student level to be able to immediately adjust to ensure that we reach our goals by the end of the year. On top of key performance indicators. On top of the KPIs that we'll be monitoring, we'll also have a new product that we're adopting called Whetstone. And Whetstone allows us to take the instructional walks and be able to record what is happening in the classroom. what is happening with our curriculum implementation, what is happening with Springway systems, and also for our students in special education, our English language learner, our accommodations being implemented. And there are dashboards that can be looked at each level in order to inform the fidelity of the implementation. And we'll be constantly going back and supporting campuses and diverting resources based on the areas that we see need. So there won't be a question of, well, I walked and I saw it this time. We will have a whole selection of data that we'll be able to pull from to see what are those trends by teacher, by campus, and across the district. Number 3 is maximizing learning time. We know that that is so essential, that the minutes that students have in the classroom directly impacts student achievement. And so as part of that, we want to ensure that we have that continuous cycle of data being used to inform instruction and close gaps before students are in tier 2 or tier 3 levels of intervention. And so within the instructional models for every level for literacy and math, there will be small group intervention built in. As part of the rotation, students will have direct instruction. They'll also engage in independent practice, working on a platform where they're practicing their skills, as well as the teacher collecting data, and while the teacher works in small group. So that work will not only focus on accelerated learning, it will also focus on helping students who may be at the MEETS level get to that master's level. So in that small group instruction, teachers are giving each student according to their need. High dosage tutoring is a huge component. And that we saw just now that was part of the instructional model as small group instruction really focused on acceleration versus remediation. And that's an important point. For a long time in education, we tend to look at those gaps where students are and seeing, okay, we need to go all the way back here for a grade 4 student to grade 2 because they miss these skills. The problem what happens when you do that is those gaps continue to grow, because you may be able to provide support for that grade 2, but they're still moving up a grade level. And so the whole philosophy acceleration is that instead of that, you look at those foundational skills that apply to that specific grade level that they're in. So you're building what they need to be successful. In that small group rotation, they're getting that grade level piece. And then on top of that, we have interventionists and tutoring that are continuing to assist the teacher in closing the gaps. And so our work is really being guided by the High Impact Tutoring Toolkit developed by TEA. But we do have an exciting thing to share with that as well. So Spring ISD was showcased last week by TEA in their big reveal of the High Impact Tutoring Toolkit. And the reason for that is we were instrumental as this was put together. They had heard of the great things and innovative tutoring that we did here in Spring. And so they came in, then they interviewed us and really got copies of our artifacts, of our intervention schedules, and they utilized many of those items in that tutoring toolkit as the guidance. And they utilized, had us come, and actually they had a 1-hour rollout for this toolkit, and 30 minutes of that was focused on Spring ISD and the work we had done, and then they rolled into the High Impact Tutoring Kit. So there's a lot to be proud of here. And tenet 5 is safe and secure learning environments. And you'll notice also, again, those stars for counselors, the community and schools program, and the social emotional curriculum. So we know our counselors play an essential role in that social emotional support. When we look at the elementary level, you can see the total number of counselors that we have, as well as the additional counselors that are being added under this recovery plan. And we can see that what the result is that an average caseload per counselor at elementary of 423. The national average, according to the American School Counselor Association, is actually 465, and TEA sets that as no more than 500. So we are well below both of those numbers. When we look at middle school, We can also see there the average caseload at 317. And then for high school, 304. And for the secondary level, TEA recommends 350. And so we are well below that as well. The other items that our teams have operationalized that we wanted to showcase was the work of our Family and Community Engagement Center and offering parent engagement programs, having our teachers be able to connect with the learning, as well as work with them to inform them as parents and partner with them. We'll continue the work with Everyday Counts and Attendance Matters, as well as bring in Quaver SEL as a full curriculum for K-5 for social emotional learning. So teachers won't need to pull from places. It's already built out for them and it's very engaging. And then 7 mindsets for our secondary level with that focus on supporting and wraparound services for students. And that last image, Time for Lunch, is really a reminder of the work that our counselors do as they meet with students often during their lunch periods, building those relationships and supporting them. All of these items working together to ensure that we meet our goals under the recovery plan, as well as meet the North goal that we know you'll be setting. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Dr. Parasol?
You went a little too fast. Oh, we need some processing.
You're not the first to accuse me of that, yes.
We're still reading and you're talking.
I had
You're next.
what is the is RIT an acronym? What's that stand for?
Yes, response to intervention.
No, that's RTI. There's a measure that the MAP.
Oh, the RIT score from MAP. Yes, and that's part of the NWEA. They've developed a RIT score that they used and they've created as part of that framework as they've looked and normed their assessment across the United States and across Texas. So the RIT score is tied specifically to NWA MAP.
So, but RIT isn't an acronym that stands for anything. It's just.
Dr. Cobb, I know is coming.
Because we're going to be talking about it, I'd like to at least be able to.
Okay, don't hold me to the I and the T, but the Rauschhaus is the name of the man who created the scaling tool.
Okay.
It's index and then the T blanking.
Okay, but it's some sort of index
It's their
score.
scale. It's their scaling measure.
I got you.
Yes.
And the other question I had when she was talking, she talked about the COVID considerations, right? And I wondered about whether in the modeling of what we were experiencing, there was ways to control for the COVID considerations. Can you control for the sample, like the group of students and the different amount of times that kids missed? And is there a statistical way to control for the differences between remote and in person? I know that's probably a tall order, but.
So I think what will be helpful. So what help when you do controlling in statistics, it's helpful to have a guide. So you kind of know how much you need to be controlling for, because I could control for something and I've just thrown off the whole system, but I've controlled for the variable, meaning that it's not taking an impact. Like you can do analysis and control for economically disadvantaged, for example. Part of I believe you were there today, they were talking about the TEA study that's coming out here in a week or two. I think that's going to be very informative to us to find out which variables they found had an impact, because that can then start our conversations. Because to your point, in person and remote, I think that is a extenuating variable that will actually impact, and we'll see long-term impact.
There's also a lot of variance. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's also a lot of variance in how in-person and remote impacted different kids and different groups of kids.
Right,
So,
some thrived and some struggled.
Yeah.
And it's probably dependent on their home environment where they, do they have a supportive parent that was there to assist? Well, that could be almost like homeschooling. Or were you also taking care of your brother and your sister and working another job? So I definitely can look at it. I know there's going to be a lot of dissertations after this, so we'll have a lot of ability. We'll have a much better idea and ability to do those kind of statistical analysis. Also, as years go by, or more data sets. So the more data you have, the more you can kind of tell what's happening.
Can we talk a little bit about the teacher profile? And on
Mine, okay.
the second page, it talks under the do's and don'ts. The last one speaks to how we're going to collaborate into student outcomes. And what's the frequency in that?
Okay. Yes, so that's not part of the presentation. That was but this was my presentation, so I can speak to it. So this was presented to principals and assistant superintendents of schools at the end of this Summer Leadership Institute last week. So we are planning to at least update at the middle of the year, or in around December, because we have standardized testing that occurs. And so that would be a little bit in December, and then January, all the MOIs. So as you see here, then it would be an MOI for MAP. There's also kind of standardized testing that's occurring throughout the district. That's a district-based testing that will also be a part of it. So we're planning to at least do it after the winter break, and then just saw that flip, and then at the end of the year again.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
there more to the?
Yeah,
I guess
she went-
I asked because we had, you know where I'm going, don't you?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll let you. You want me to ask my question, or you gonna answer before I ask you? So we know learning happens in the classroom, and we talked about at one point having some way to assess, even if it's at the 9-week, 6-week cycle, whether or not that student struggled in a particular TEK, and then how do we intervene with that for that particular teacher to get development for her? So if we can develop, if we can use the outcomes of the students on a consistent basis, whatever that timing might be, as it relates to that teacher, and see where she's struggling or he's struggling, and how do we intervene so that the cycle stops?
So that's, I think, more to, I'm sorry, Dr. Watson, I'm about to answer your question. I think that's more in the realm of the KPIs, the key performance indicators, because that's a monthly update, and we're
Monthly.
working on it. One, it's a dashboard, but then it has drill down capabilities to go down to that level of granularity that you're talking about. There are systems that we have in place for that, but visually they're not very, they're difficult to navigate and to use. So we want to be able to have that readily available, especially at our levels where we can drill down quickly. And also the principal has a quick drill down function.
Right, and I'd also say this really takes into account the feedback that we all receive with you, especially when you all were talking about the mandatory professional development for teachers.
That's where I'm going
And
next.
so when you look at this profile, it really gives the teacher a glimpse of their performance, and not just the one shot. You can see over 3 years, if you've been teaching for 3 years and you have 3 years worth of data, where you've been and where the kids that you've taught, where they are. Which sometimes we may say, it's good for you to go and attend this PD, and you may say, well, I don't think I want to do that. Or the equity study said they will go and attend something different. This helps us really begin to focus in on the content that they're teaching, the scores of their kids, their attendance, as well as areas for improvement. So you could really have a good conversation with the teacher. The principal can have a good conversation with the APs who are supervising groups of teachers to see if all of the teachers, if there's any ones that's doing better than others, so they can plan together, talk with each other, collaborate together, attend training together, and or opportunities for the assistant soups to group their principals together to see what training and supports that they need. So this was really out of a response to how do we identify the PD? What can we do to support the teachers and give them that? But then as a teacher, they have their own profile for them to look at their own work, but more importantly, their impact on student achievement.
Okay, I think with what we've been through, intervention is going to be so critical, and with our mobility, it's just critical. And I think we we may identify it from the student, but I think we also have to look at that same lens with our teachers.
Absolutely.
You know, and get them what they need. And if we see consistently across the board, all the teachers are struggling in this specific area, then is it the curriculum or do we need to adjust something?
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what happened this summer. Exactly what you're saying in terms of students in summer school. So often, who wants to volunteer to teach on Saturday? Who wants to volunteer to do before and after school? Well, if we're looking at the profile and you're not successful with those kids during the day, you may not be the best candidate to teach them on the weekend or in the evenings or during tutorials.
Mr. Adams, it looks like you're up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was just trying to, like the Lone Star speak for this. I think what we're talking about is outputs, the mid-range counting of what our inputs are doing, as distinct from outcomes. And so I was looking that way because I'm processing, thinking about this that way. So
You're absolutely right. It is an output. The board has the overall outcome, but in order for you all to know that we're meeting the goals, the progress measures, we have to look at the outputs that lets us know if we need to pivot or keep going because we're making the progress that we need.
right.
I thought that Commissioner Morath made some interesting comments today about the importance of parents as instructors, especially since we had that interesting data with our own students that sometimes they did better in virtual instruction. He didn't have all the answers, but he said that parents are the first instructors of children. And I'm just wondering if there's another. I'm not replacing teachers. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that maybe there's an opportunity here to bring in another group of people onto the team for the benefit of the students.
I think that really goes to what Justine said earlier. You're absolutely right. We said it very early on that there's more work to do than we have staff for. And that's why we met with the parents and met with the ministers. And to our surprise, they were excited about bringing their whole congregations together and finding tutors in their own churches that are retired individuals or parents that really want to just help. And so they've really taken off with that. It's going well. We got a few glitches we're working out, but they've been trained. They have the curriculum. I think it's really something on which for us to build.
And I was thinking, how is this going to work? So I actually kind of peeked in and listened to some of the training when my daughter was done. They focused in on the most common questions that are missed on the exam, and then how do you teach that, and what to look for. And they really took the time. Spring really took the time to train the volunteers, in our local churches who are actually intervening with our students right now. To get them back up to speed. And so I think that's a great step in that direction, Dr. Jensen. But you're right, it takes a village.
Dr. Jensen, it's Lupita. Just wanted to add on to the parents. I do want to let the board know our parents are also attending summer school. So they're also learning exactly what's being taught during summer school so that they can continue to support their children at home, whether it's what the kids are learning in our face-to-face summer program or on the on-demand virtual. So we do have with us our Executive Director of Family and Community Engagement, Ms. Carol, back here. And, all year long, to support your goal of family empowerment, we've been working side by side, our family engagement team and our curriculum team coming together, training our family engagement team so that they can work with our parents. What we saw happening during virtual instruction were parents sitting and listening to the lessons, kind of what Ms. Durant did with her daughter, and then they were able to help their children. We want to be able to continue that. And so during summer, every Monday for 3 weeks, we're having virtual summer parent summer school as well as face-to-face out at Westfield. And, just empowering our parents so that they can continue just what the commissioner said. And then, of course, our community with our ministerial alliance. Together, we will make sure and accelerate our students' learning so that they can get back on track.
What kind of participation are we seeing with the parents?
I'm going to say really good participation, but we do have Ms. Carroll here.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much, Dr. Hinojosa. And as Dr. Hinojosa said, we have a wonderful partnership with our academic team, and they have been coming out and working with the family engagement team to really work with our families. And so, as Dr. Hinojosa said, during the day, we have lunch and learn with our families, and our attendance is slightly higher during the lunch and learn that's virtual than what we have in the evenings. In the evenings, it is from 6 to 7:30 at Westfield High School. The rain kind of kept some of our parents away last night, but we had good showing Monday, and then our final session will be next Monday, and we will focus on assessments with the Research and Accountability Department. So we really are working very closely with academics and research and accountability to empower our parents and make sure they are able and they do have all the tools in their tool belt to help their kids with their work, their schoolwork, and their homework.
Ms. Terrell, can you quantify that a little bit more? Ballpark it. I mean, what does participation number-wise look like?
So virtually, and last week I actually was at the Leadership Institute, and so I was not present for those virtual ones, but I think we had upwards of about 10 or so. I think yesterday we may have had about 3 or 4 to come face to face. Our face to face has not been very high, but particularly yesterday because of the rain,
But
we
the
have had a few
virtuals-
more.
Virtuals is about how many?
The virtual we get upwards in the double digits, about 10, 11, 12, something like that.
Okay.
This is our first time doing that, and so we don't have as high an impact as what we're hoping for, but we do plan to continue this through the year, and we know that our participation will increase
So
and we will gain momentum.
I would say I wasn't aware of that. And so there might be maybe some sort of marketing or get out the message, because that's something that I know my family would like to participate.
Yes,
That's kind of why I
and
asked.
That was my question.
That's why I asked, yeah.
yes, and something did happen with us. It is on our website, but it did take a minute to get on the website. But we do have an article, and of course, we're using social media. And all of the families who have participated in our events in the past did get a personal invitation. So we are definitely planning to amp up our marketing and our advertising when we resume in August. We won't do it in July, but we will start back in August. And every single month, we will bring our families in the way we did this summer. Last Monday, we focused on our PBLs. And then yesterday, it was Amplify Reading and Eureka Math. And then for the high schools, it was Edgenuity. And then again, next week, we'll focus on assessments.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I know family engagement was doing the thing with the infants before, and
And we still are.
yeah, I think we get a lot of bang for our buck with that. And again, to what Commissioner Morath said, engaging families in that way, engaging parents in that way, so that they're not lost, because education is changing, and like we're part of that change, and Commissioner Morath is pushing that change. And so,
And actually, I was just about to say that we are changing, and we being the department in the past, we focus on not just academics, but social, emotional, and bullying workshops and human trafficking workshops and things like that. But moving forward, we are being very intentional with making sure our parents are able to empower their kids academically. And so it's very important that we continue our relationship and our partnership with academics, the academics department. And so all of our work will be focus we're going to hone in on our curriculum and our materials and our resources to support academics. And that is going to be a change for our families because we have many families who are used to the fun activities that we've hosted in the past. And not that education is not fun, but we certainly want to make sure that's our focus, our curriculum needs.
Great.
I just had one comment, Ms. Carroll, about the outreach. I know something that we found that works with my organization is text messaging to parents, especially as it relates to our youth sports. So that I'm not sure we have that sort of mechanism or we're able to do that in spring. I think I used to get text messages. So if that may be helpful as well, because everyone, may not go to the website. If they're like me, their mail is stacked up this high, so they may not,
Absolutely.
they may not go through the mail as well.
Text messages,
And we will.
even a robocalls and what at the church I think we had some of the teenagers show up because they're giving away what are those bucks they get for the games they play, PlayStation games, and they giving out those cards and they want those points, so they're there in those tutorials. Yeah.
Yes. We absolutely will. And so we've taken it in stride. We kind of laughed to ourselves the other night when our participation is not as high as what we wanted. We said, well, this is okay. This is our at-bat for what August will look like. So we are definitely determined, and we will definitely stay the course because we know that, as you said earlier, we cannot do it without our families. And so we will continue, and we will amp up our advertisement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May
So
I
you
just
mentioned
add? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just add one more thing. Sometimes parents are really the thing that makes the education go home in the brain of a child, because you can be in a math class and learn some geometry and shapes and things. And if a parent's involved, they say, while they're driving, let's try to find all the circles we can see, or let's find all the triangles we can see, things like that. Parents make up just in normal family activities, they or even reading skills, that they bring these things up, and it really makes it so much more effective for the kids to actually see the relevance of what they're learning, and to see coherence and integration of their knowledge. So I think this is really an important factor in as we go forward. The other thing is, we all know in elementary school, if your child is performing or doing something, the parents are there, and quite often the grandparents as well. And I think, having like math nights and different kinds of content, relevant, fun activities and get-togethers is another way to relate to them.
And I think as a district, we've seen success in bringing academics into our arts, because it does bring parents and also engagement for the students. I was thinking about one of the things you said when we first came back virtual. There were actually lessons for parents where I remember reading one of them where they could use the cereal box during breakfast, to help the kids with their measurements. And how much milk did you put in? How many cups of cereal is that? And so I think we've started a lot of that work. And if we just continue it, it can only benefit our students.
So I did, Ms. Newhouse, if you don't mind, I wanted Dr. Parasol to come up. We were able to pull up a parent guide to student assessments. Do you want to, just working as Ms. Carroll talked about, our parents having a good understanding of the different assessments. So.
And so we're really excited about rolling this out at the end of the summer and in preparation for this new school year. So one of the things that came out from our ACE committee, as well as from our parent feedback, was we use all these educationese terms, right? Especially regarding assessments. And so really to provide a guide to parents so that we can partner with them. And this was really a partnership between curriculum and our communications department and our assessment department in putting this together, and will also be a huge part with our family and community engagement as we push it out. So kind of want to just give you an overview of what is in it. So this is the cover that parents would see. As soon as they go in, it gives them a little walkthrough of what they can find within the guide. And so every single assessment that we have has a page, and it shows the assessment overview as well as details for the parent, written in parent-friendly language regarding the assessment itself. There's videos that are embedded explaining what the assessment is and how to understand the data, as well as resources for parents so they know what to do next. The assessments are broken up by grade level, and you can see those on the tabs on the left-hand side. And Dr. Hinojosa is going to select one of them for us.
What do we want?
We can do pre-K, or this one works, grade 6 through 8 MAP. So there you can see we talked about MAP today. And you can see there an explanation of MAP, just like we talked about what the MAP measures. And then even those resources to the right for parents to utilize as they get those reports and have those conversations with their teachers over the MAP results.
And those resources are links.
They are all links, that is correct. So there's a little video that's linked in about the student profile and provides that explanation to parents regarding the details of MAP in the report. So if we go back, you can also see, so not only did we include the various assessments and the screener tools, if you go down to the last two tabs, you'll see that one of them is STAR assessment. And so that provides an overview for parents of STAR, especially many of the parents that may be moving into the area that may not be familiar with Texas and the STAR test. Every grade level has an explanation regarding what that assessment looks like, as well as an overview of what STAR is and resources for parents. And then the last tab is regarding our curriculum. Those are our locally based assessments. And so the different terms that we use. So we do point out that many of these assessments are in Schoology as a part of our LMS, but then we talk about things like exit tickets, those checkpoints, CBAs, unit assessments, benchmarks, interims, right? All these terms that we use regularly, but are really not known to our parents who aren't educators. And so really to partner with them, to inform and give them the resources as we work together to close those gaps.
It's really impressive. So if I understand what I'm looking at here, this includes assessments like the SAT, the ACT,
Yes, if we click on the high school tab.
the AP exams. So I think like the thing that was interesting when my older set of kids was going through high school is like we were able to set sort of family goals for getting the 4 or the 5 on different AP exams, and like just talking about that at home, that like a 1200 on the SAT is a good score, a 31 on the ACT is a good score. And so, you know, when parents know what a good RIT score is, then we'll know we've reached some folks and we're having those conversations in the house. So
absolutely. And that is the intention of this guide, to be able to bring that level of explanation. And here you can see, high school just has so many, right? As we're checking college and career readiness and making sure that our students are going to be able to access the universities and programs they want. So this lays out all of those different assessments, as well as has various resources for parents.
Does our portal give statistics on who parents have logged in here?
So this hasn't rolled out yet. We'll be rolling that out as part of the new year's, but yes, absolutely. The plan is to add that as an icon in the parent portal side. So they'll be able to access, and with ClassLink, we have some really great metrics that we can pull from to identify which parent groups that we are reaching.
Because it'd really be good even at an elementary school to recognize the student that your parents have accessed it. Yeah, because sometimes just a word of recognition If we can get them started using it at an elementary level, they'll use it all the way through. Yeah.
You're so right, Ms. Duran. And I think about our literacy competitions that we rolled out this year.
Mhm.
And man, there was so much competition from the principals. They wanted that banner to hang on their school that they were number one. So absolutely.
Get those kids amped up, yeah, make their parents log in.
I just noticed on this page, join Khan Academy as a parent. So you can actually engage in the content that your students are learning. Great.
Yes, there is multiple resources there to be able to help students as they practice and get ready for the assessment. So yes, that's a great resource for all students.
And I was glad to see that you gave us information on emotional support for our students that are going through all of this. We now have the CIS in each one of our high schools, like, and in our middle schools, and the at-risk counselor, and the ratio of students to counselors is very obtainable for counselors to actually be able to reach each one of their students, you know. Used to be 500, 400.
Or six
Now-
something when I first got on the
Now
board.
we're down to
600
304, very obtainable for our counselors. So
Thank
we
you
are
for-
very concerned about their emotional needs in dealing with this, that I know CIS will reach out to families and bring them in with that. So
Oh, I thank
this
you.
is very,
It answered all my questions and
very good.
you knew what I wanted. Huh?
Go ahead and ask it.
No, I'm good.
Okay, you good?
I'm good.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. I think we were still taking time to look through this. Dr.
I have
Parasol,
one
thank you
comment.
for
I'm
that
sorry, I said I was
presentation.
good, but I do have one comment.
Mhm.
In that we're ensuring that the counselors are able to focus on what they need to be focused on and not pulled into other areas.
Yes, and that is the work that Mark is doing with our Director of Counseling, that they're working on their job description, making sure they're doing their job and not all the extra things. Okay. And we'll be providing you an update throughout the year on that.
Okay. As we continue tonight, for our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of Human Resources and Human Capital Accountability, Dr. Julie Hill.
Thank you, Madam President, trustees, and Dr. Watson. I have 3 annual items that we're bringing for approval tonight. The first description is on page 10, and I believe that you received a copy earlier of the compensation plan. It's, like I said, it's basically an annual renewal. I just would want to call your attention to one slight change that we're going to make on page 18. You see listed there under pay grade 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 from the bottom, or the 5th one, you see a facilitator professional development. And there's also one there for literacy. We are going to be moving those 2 groups to a 226-day calendar, because just like we had this fantastic Summer Leadership Institute for the principals, we also have one plan for the teachers, and we actually need the people to help plan it. And so it's going to be much more feasible that we expand their work schedule rather than bring them in a few days at a time and pay them additional compensation for coming in off contract. And so that's the only change that we will make before we publish. Are there any questions? Fantastic. Then if you would review your description.
Julie, hold for a minute. I think they're still processing.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
I think we were writing down your comments and to where on page 18.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's in the binder.
Yeah, in the binder, page 18 in the binder. Dr. Hill, if you will share that information again, please.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, is my volume loud enough on my computer? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Mhm.
Fantastic.
Thank
So,
you.
on page 18 of the plan, if you would count up 5 from the bottom, you see a listing for facilitator professional development, Title II, and facilitator professional development, Title II, literacy. Those 2 positions right now are on a 197 work calendar. That's their work schedule. But in
I'm
order
sorry,
to,
Dr. Hill, our page numbers are not aligning with yours. Am I the
think
only
she's-
one that can't find it?
I think she's on page maybe 17. That's,
I'm sorry, can you help me out, Mr. Binkley? I'm not sure what, I'm just working off of my loose documents.
It's in the packet. Remind me which item are you on?
I'm on the compensation plan.
Okay, so that one's going to be in the folder, in the pink folder.
And page 18 is a cover page.
the cover, yeah.
Then page, my apologies, then it must be page.
The pink folder is a cover page.
Page 18 is a cover page, Julie.
Okay, does it say administrative instructional salary schedule?
Yes.
Perfect. Would you turn to the next page? Sorry, my pages are off from yours. I apologize for that.
Okay.
In the compensation plan?
Yes. So that would be 5 from the bottom. You see facilitator, professional development. Title II. The very top of the page should have the header, administrative instructional pay plan. You'll see a blue band that says, and underneath it, a gray band that says 1, that's pay grade 1. The second one is pay grade 2. And then if you count 5 from the bottom, that's where you should see the facilitator professional development.
Yeah, for some reason, it's counselors.
Julie, do you have your pink folder there?
I do not. Am I in the wrong? I thought it was in the right compensation plan.
Does mine look like yours?
Dr. Watson, it's in the binder. It's in this one. It's not in the pink folder, but it is here.
It's in, give us just a moment. Let us. It's not in the binder, Dr. Hinojosa. Dr. Hill, Jason's going to walk down with the handout folder for you.
While Jason walks downstairs to meet with Dr. Hill, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Yeah. Dr. Hill? Thank you for the time to get our coffee and our break. We appreciate it.
Well, my most humble apologies. You know, I spent so much time trying to make sure that document was beautiful. And as soon as they converted that puppy, it jumped everywhere. So you didn't know what I was talking about. You were looking at gray boxes. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, well, now that you're hydrated and had a little bit of a snack and a walk around, let's try again. So I think Jason just delivered you a packet. So now if you could join me on page 18 of that packet. The very top should say 2021-22 Administrative Instructional Pay Plan. And we're looking under the second gray bar that says 2, that's pay grade 2. And if you would go down to the bottom of the page, you're counting 5 positions from the bottom where it says Facilitator Professional Development Title II. And right below it, Facilitator Professional Development Title II Literacy.
Yes.
Those particular positions currently were 197s, but we are changing them to 226s. Those are the individuals who provide professional development training across the district. And as I was saying earlier, just like we had a fantastic delivery for our principals and our other leaders, we want to make sure we can provide the same quality for the teachers. And so we need them here. They're not on their work schedules now. So we're extending their work schedule so that we can provide the professional development, all the training, the preparation, the writing, the practice, and everything that we did for our leaders will be the very same thing we want for our teachers and our teacher leaders as well. So that's the only change to the document.
So I have a question for clarification. These are full-time exempt positions?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit, Julie, about the difference for different days for different positions and kind of just an overview of that?
Yes, we're going to talk about it in just a moment for the work calendar, but I can jump in right now because your work calendar is inside your packet. It's actually behind page 12, and it runs for several different pages. So the difference in your work calendar is determined by your job position and actually how long you serve in that particular position. So our teachers, for example, are on 187 work days. These particular individuals that we're talking about right now, our professional development facilitators, would not only do, in the past, they did an additional 10 days, but because we're running professional development all summer long, that's why we are extending them to 226, which is what all of us who are sitting in the room with you are on. We're on a 226 calendar, which means we work all year round. We have various calendars depending on what individuals' positions are. As a matter of fact, I think currently right now, we have 27 different calendars. And the calendar is different based on when your start date is and when your end date is. And basically it's worked around when do we need you most? What are your peak work times? And that's when your calendars usually start and end.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Are there any other particular questions? I know you're just getting a chance to see it. I'm so sorry. I just thought you had my beautiful copy in front of you all this time.
Well, it looks beautiful now. And the changes on the page 18 are the only changes. That's what,
Yes, ma'am.
correct. Okay.
And so what you see there, the compensation plan covers every single position in the district. That full-time ones. I mean, the part-time ones, we don't usually calculate on those schedules. That's different, but all the full-time positions are listed.
Dr. Hill, could you refresh my recollection? How many employees does the district have and how many FTEs do we have, if it's not the same thing?
We have approximately 5,200. I can't get down to the exact little number. In terms of part-time, Ms. Westbrooks might be able to jump in and help me even more with that number. my guess is probably going to be too low.
With part-time, so we use the terminology a little differently. So part-time individuals are folks that do not have a set schedule. For half-time individuals that work on average 20 to 30 hours a week, we have less than 100. And so that's like our crossing guards, those sorts of positions.
What percentage of the 5,200 or 5,300 are teachers?
Approximately about
Percent.
Half. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Adams, did that help?
Yes, I guess the only other, so I can recall that every year we were attempting to be fully staffed before the start of the school year, to be at 100% of our positions filled. So no classroom had a substitute in it, or every classroom was staffed with highly qualified. Do we still use the Nickleby language of certified and highly qualified? Okay, and so I wonder if, especially given COVID, how much harder is that going to be going forward, do you think?
Do I know? It's extremely hard. We've had a number of teachers that have resigned during COVID, as most districts around us are experiencing. There's a shortage of teachers coming out of universities, especially now during COVID. Every district around will report that they're having trouble finding teachers. They're not having trouble finding administrators. And so it's very difficult to find teachers right now. And so our team is definitely attending all of the fairs. Most of the fairs this year has been virtual fairs, which is totally different than being able to go to a university. They're looking at alternative certification programs. And so they're looking at a variety of measures to recruit.
I think it needs to be acknowledged that another mitigation as we try to accelerate student learning and overcome learning loss is kind of this other thing that's happening with the lack of teachers in the pool and in the market to do this really hard, heavy lift, I think, over the next year or two. So.
I think it's interesting to look at the stipends on page 12 of identified shortage areas. And it's the same things we always have trouble filling. If there's anybody out there who's interested in being a bilingual teacher, now's the time to do it.
I would agree with every word that Dr. Watson said, and Mr. Adams. It's extremely challenging. However, we are relentless in our pursuit. We're going to we just decided to have another job fair this weekend, just to see if we can get even closer and closer and closer to closing the gaps and finding teachers for our children. It's a challenge, but we're thinking of every creative and witty idea that we have right now to get people in place. We'll continue to do that. Any other questions?
Hearing none, thank you, Dr. Hill. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Compensation Manual.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021 to 2022 Spring Independent School District Compensation Manual.
It's been moved by Deborah Jensen and seconded by Justine Durant that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Compensation Manual. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Please continue with your next item.
Thank you very much, and hopefully that'll be much easier if you would go to your agenda packet and go to page 11. That's where you'll see the start of the staffing guidelines, which is another annual item. And we don't have any changes to this document since you received it last week. This particular document outlines every position and how each campus is staffed. And then at the very back of it, the second half, you'll see how all of our departments that support our schools, which is why we exist to support schools, how they staff as well.
Dr. Hill, I did have a few questions in this area. On page 11.5, and it's 5 of the original document, middle school staffing guidelines. I didn't see any PVA personnel, but if you flip the page to Roberson, the next page, there's under performing and visual arts, there's 6 different types of teachers. And am I just missing it in the other middle schools?
It should be listed under the Performing and Visual Arts has the staffing guidelines, and it shows the staffing for high school and the staffing for middle school on that individual one for PVA as a whole.
Does that mean that they're answering to the department PVA or not?
I think it's a dotted line. They report to the principal directly, but they also, of course, have some direction that comes from the central office Performing and Visual Arts team.
Okay, so the Roberson PVA teachers would not be listed again under PVA, right?
They wouldn't be listed again because there are some, because of Robertson's size, there are some differences in how they are staffed as opposed to the others. I think the page Ann was pointing out to you is on page 19 where the general guidelines are. 1119 for the performing and visual arts staffing guidelines for middle school and high school. Robertson doesn't have everything that the others have, and so that's why there's a separate call out on their staffing form as to what PVA positions they receive.
When I saw all the PVA at Robertson, I was expecting to see choir and band under the middle school, but I guess it's in another section. The other thing I was interested in is secondary schools have registered nurses. Elementaries have the LVNs. Is that because there's less serious problems in elementary school?
Well, I wouldn't say that. The numbers are smaller in our elementary schools as opposed to our high schools. And so to that degree, it could very well be, with all the different activities going on at the high school, there's some additional, I guess, propensity for some injuries. But no, it's not necessarily that you have more problems going on at one than the other. Primarily, most of what we deal with at the elementary school is dispensing medication to students. And of course, if they occasionally get sick while they're at school. But there's a much broader set of activities going on in our high schools, which necessitate, and including the size, necessitate an RN on site.
So I thought we had LVNs at the elementary school, but there was an RN that oversaw so many elementary schools.
There are lead RN nurses who, like many other positions in the district, will have a set of schools that they actually provide support to. And so there are those lead RNs who are available to be called at any time to any of the schools. And when we have additional emergencies, we also will call on the RNs from the different locations in the district to go to a site where they may be needed.
when I went to the PVA page, 11.19, it just amazes me that those band directors, one teacher is responsible for 0 to 175 students. I know this is probably 8 different class periods a day, but I'm still in awe of anybody who can handle and teach many different instruments to middle schoolers. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes, ma'am.
Another thing I was interested in on page 11.21, or your document, page 21, and this was in transportation. The special ed bus drivers, there's 57 of them, and there's 69 bus attendants for special ed. We have a family member who benefited many years to having a bus driver and an assistant there. So I just wanted to point out that we make a significant allocation of personnel to be sure that the kids are special ed kids are transported safely.
Yes, ma'am. And the reason that the attendant number is slightly higher is there are some students that need one-to-one care even on the bus. And that's why there are additional higher number of attendants than there are drivers.
And then I had a question because I got into the operations department, and on page 11.23 or 23 in your document, now I know receptionists and laundry deliverer and that sort of thing, but I wondered what a floor technician was.
Miranda, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to answer that. Jim. Yeah, a floor technician is a person who specializes obviously in floors. And so we have a team that goes around the district and does just the floors. So they can do some specialized carpet extraction. They can also work on different situations with different tile and different floors that we have throughout the district.
So they must have special equipment,
They have-
special
Correct.
knowledge.
They have
and-
special equipment and special knowledge and training
My goodness.
for floors.
Any other questions?
I did have another question. Page 11.26, now we're in child nutrition. The ninth grade centers have 9 people per ninth grade center. Early College Academy only has 2 people. Is this because they're eating at the Lone Star cafeteria or something?
They're not eating at the cafeteria. They're eating, they're served in a different location, but we are able to use some of the facilities there. And so, yeah, they do have a smaller staff. We'll need to double check that though. I think we may be supplementing that too.
Thank you.
I may have missed this, but how many vacant positions do we anticipate having at the end of this or at the beginning of the school year? How many do we have now, I guess is a better question.
Well, in some cases, we're running about on average every year, we hire about between 450 and 500 new teachers. But the trend is pretty much the same. It's still running in that direction.
And I don't know how quick of an answer this is, but what does onboarding look like for teachers? I'm just curious. Because that's a lot of people.
I see several people. Go ahead, Dr. Watson. I'll defer to you.
Oh, no, I was looking for you on the screen.
No problem.
So onboarding and induction looks different on both sides. And so onboarding is what the employee comes in. And so that's what the equity study said that we really needed to work on in terms of orienting people into the district, talking with them about the types of children that we serve, our communities, going through the curriculum. A lot of that is going to happen with what Dr. Parasol talked about in terms of all of the summer training and things that our students, not students, but our teachers need. And then once they're in there, it's that principal and the department lead to induct them into the department. And so we have onboarding and we also have induction.
And we actually get the ball rolling here in HR with new employee orientation, where each new employee to the district reports in. And we had already anticipated that we wanted to change our new employee orientation and really make sure that we, as employees come in for the first time, give them our basics, our demographics of the district, who we are and what we stand for. Right now, we're still using our old strategic plan, but we are looking forward to once the launch of the new happens, we can put all of that new information in and change it out. But for right now, we're still using our Every Child 2020. And of course, we've changed it because the leadership definition, Spring ISD leadership definition, is the cornerstone of our new employee orientation that we have right now. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Staffing Guidelines Manual.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Staffing Guideline Manual.
Second.
It's been moved by Justine Durant, second by Winfred Adams, that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Staffing Guidelines Manual. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for that one. Please continue with your next item.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. The last item is our 2021-2022 work calendar for all of our employees. It is found behind page 12 in your agenda packet. There have not been any changes from when you received it in your packet. And the only thing I wanted to point out that was new in this packet is on page 12.4, the additional day school year. The ATSI calendar is there. It's the 217-day calendar for the Clarks, for Clark Primary and Clark Intermediate. And Ms. Hodges, as a follow-up to your question, we are, of course, because the Clarks begin on July 13th, it is our #1 priority. We're filling every vacancy we can, but to staff the Clarks fully by July 13th is a short-term goal that we have now that we're pushing towards.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Work Calendar.
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees approved and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Work Calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Jana Gonzalez, and seconded by Kelly Hodges, that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the 2021-2022 Spring Independent School District Work Calendar. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Again, thank you, Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President.
As we continue tonight for our next item, I would like to again recognize our Chief of Innovation and Equity, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa.
Thank you, Ms. Newhouse, and I'm hoping that the page numbers are correct. So we are on page 13 is what it says on mine. Yes? Okay, I see Dr. Jensen saying yes, and I do want to thank, we've got Stephanie Dean on the line from Public Impact. Remember, we talked about this item last month. It's an MOU, an agreement between Public Impact and Spring ISD. This MOU would allow us the opportunity for this coming school year to be able to work and plan with Public Impact to develop our teacher residency program and really looking at an opportunity culture model that would be best suited for Spring ISD. So again, this MOU only is for us to plan, have their guidance and expertise as we look towards this coming school year to plan. Remember, we talked about Sam Houston State University and being able to bring the teacher residents in for 2022. And we do have Ms. Dean still on the line, so thank you for hanging on with us. If there's any, questions or follow-up from last month where maybe you had the opportunity to review this and look a little bit deeper into this MOU.
I think I was the one that mostly held this up. And so I had an opportunity to review the MOU and have a conversation with Dr. Watson. So I'm satisfied. I have no questions.
I spent extra time as well reviewing this. And I got to say the most interesting part of this was the appendix on page 21. First of all, I'm very impressed with Sam Houston State University's education programs. They're, I think, very well done, very practical. I'm a pragmatic person myself. But this says this organization was founded in 1996. And they've partnered with more than 300 schools and 30 local education agencies. I can tell you from having been in the game, nobody exists from 1996 until now unless they are doing a good job and somebody really delivers. So that impressed me right there. Also, it looks like they are addressing some of the needs we really need. The first bullet says that a focus on schools in need of dramatic improvement. And we do have that in our district. The other thing I'd like to point out is at the bottom of the page. It said these programs don't always work, that there's a couple of risks. And one is if you design a weak opportunity culture, and also if there's timid implementation. And that resonated with me, having, like I say, been in many programs where we were looking to see if what we were training and experiencing actually translated into a classroom and to valuable outcomes. So I'm very impressed. If you are also as interested as I am in how past participants have graded or evaluated this program. They are very, very satisfied, it looks like. So I'm glad we had this opportunity to explore this, read it in depth, and really appreciate this partnership.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve the memorandum of understanding between Public Impact and Spring Independent School District.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the memorandum of understanding between Public Impact and Spring Independent School District.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
It's been moved by Winfred Adams, seconded by Deborah Jensen, that the Board of Trustees approve the memorandum of understanding between Public Impact and Spring Independent School District. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa.
Thank you.
Well, as we conclude our agenda for tonight, if you're hearing a frog in my throat, it is one there because I now need to let two of our board members have some remarks for tonight. So I will start with ladies first. Jana Gonzalez, you have something you would like to share with the board tonight?
Yes, Madam President. It is with a heavy heart that I announce effective July 1st that I will be retiring from the Spring ISD Board of Trustees after 15 years of service. I'm sorry. I've been blessed to serve the students, staff, and community of Spring ISD. Over the years, we've built new schools, facilities, introduced new programs, and hired an outstanding superintendent, Dr. Watson. We've had some challenges along the way: hurricanes, floods, pandemics, a freeze, but Spring ISD has never stopped serving the students. It's been an honor to work with my fellow board members and the administration. My boys received an excellent education, went on to graduate from college, and have successful careers thanks to Spring ISD. I will miss everyone in Spring ISD. This will always be my home. I may be moving out of the district, but I will never stop supporting Spring ISD. Thank you for allowing me to serve this wonderful district, Spring ISD. Thank you.
With a heavy heart, we accept your resignation, Ms. Gonzalez. And I'd like to ask everyone in the room to please stand and join me in applauding. Thank you, Jana. You will truly be missed as well. And I indicated that we had two board members that wanted to share some remarks tonight. So the second one is Captain Don Davis.
Madam President, Dr. Watson, leadership team, my colleagues, echoing the words of my dear friend next to me. Likewise, on July the 1st, I'll be retiring from the board also. I'd like to share a few comments of things I think that was significant that had my major influence, as long as my the team of 8 When I ran for office almost 6 years ago, I promised the community we'll put libraries in every school. And just think, remember my first board meeting, I put it on the table and not realizing there was a process you had to go through. But I want to say today, we was able to put media aids or libraries in each one of our middle schools and our grade schools. The spring veteran memorial was something I always wanted to do from the day I was employed in the district. And thanks to Mark and the bond that was passed, we was able to build an outstanding memorial or a highlight site in our district. Furthermore, I talked to Ms. Westbrook from day one about a facility for Spring High School, ROTC, James Boyer, Naval ROTC, and also a facility for Westfield ROTC, where my heart is deeply embedded. I want to say both those things have taken place. The LOTC program at our Leadership Academy was another thing that I thought that needed to be brought to the district. I'm military oriented. I thought it'd be a significant opportunity for our middle school students to have the opportunity to serve in that capacity and leadership role, and that became a reality too. In our last meeting, we had the opportunity to vote and approve a employee health insurance, which I think is greatly needed in our district, which gave an option to our employees to choose whether they can stay the care we already have that's provided by the TEA or the care that they can choose another option. And that was put on the table also. Of course, we all different. We have different political beliefs. We come from different walks of life. We have different values. But there's a common bond on this board. We always put our students first. We may debate over different things, but when we get in our closed session, we always ask, what's best for the students of Spring? What's best for our children? And without hesitation, we always put our values and our attention on the children in this district. This is a great district. I'm not leaving the district. I'm going to still serve through my scholarship through the foundation and through the CTA advisory board. I'm going to continue my support with scholarships and my allegiance there. And I also spent some time with ROTC Westfield. I want them to go to national debate and leadership opportunity again at that level, which hadn't been in a few years. So I'm going to update my time with training those students to excel so they can have another national championship that happened under my leadership while I was at Westfield. I want to thank each one of y'all, and since it's on video, I want to thank the public for investing and trusting their children, on our leadership, Janet, our leadership, while we serve on this board. Thank you, and I appreciate everything that we have done over the last 6.5 years. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Captain Davis. And I would also like everyone to please join me in giving Captain Davis a round of applause. You both will be truly missed. And I would be remiss to say, is there any board member that would like to give a remark or have something to say before we go into closed session?
I'd like to jump in and say, it's a heavy heart. Jan and I have been here together 15 years. And I am truly going to miss her. I've always admired her commitment to our students, her commitment to our FFA program, our education foundation, and her love and support of Spring ISD overall. And I'm not going to let you get too far away from me. I plan to stay in touch. And congratulations on your move. And I'd also like to thank Captain Davis, not just for his support and dedication to the board, but his tenure to Spring ISD as a staff member as well. He's given from both perspectives, and it's been a pleasure to serve with the both of you.
So I have spent some time with other board members across the state of Texas. And so I am acutely aware of how blessed I have been to be elected to this particular board and to serve with these two people. Don has been mentoring me since I first got on the board, mentored me through Leadership TASB. Jen has always been a rock steady person that you could always look to, always has seen just about everything. And so when I encounter other board members and they don't have a veteran like Jen or somebody as committed as Don on their board, like I said, I know we are fortunate here in Spring to have served with you. So I want to thank both of you for your service and for helping to guide me through my young boardship. Thank you so much.
And I just want to add to what Justine and Winfred have already said, that these two people are heroes. When I was president on the board, we had some meetings and different hearings that it was really hard to get a quorum. And these people came in after working like 12-hour days, and then they'd come and serve in a capacity. And so, like I said, I think they're my heroes.
Well, we can say thank you, thank you, thank you, and we will continue with our meeting. So at this time, the Board of Trustees will now recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in the closed meeting will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. The time is now 10:12 p.m. Thank you. We will now reconvene and resume the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. The time is now 11:05 p.m. We will now address the items discussed during closed session. Are there any motions?
Madam President, I move that the board issue a school district teaching permit to the following employee, Linda Doe, for the purpose of teaching non-core career and technology courses, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to notify the Commissioner of Education of the board's action.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Deborah Jensen, seconded by Winfred Adams, that the board issue a school district teaching permit to Linda Doe for the purpose of teaching non-core career and technology courses, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to notify the Commissioner of Education of the board's decision. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions? Hearing none. There are no other items on the agenda for tonight, so I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Madam President, I move adjournment.
Second. It has been moved by Winfred Adams and seconded by Justine Durant that the Board of Trustees adjourn this meeting. All those in favor, raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Since there are no further business, this meeting is officially adjourned at 11:07 p.m.